what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy.
At the number 48 overall pick in round 2, he has the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting an LSU defensive tackle. But it is not Makai Wingo. He has them taking Mason Smith. I don't know about this pick. Mason Smith has a lot of potential. He has a lot of size. I get it. A lot of his career was due to injury, but he never lived up to that 5-star billing here during his college career. It was a surprise to me that he declared for the NFL draft because on National Signing Day, Brian Kelly had a press conference and someone asked him about the lack of signees at the defensive tackle spot. And he came out bluntly and said, we feel really good about our retention at that position. He was talking about Mason Smith. About a week later, Mason Smith declares for the NFL draft. Now, was that because they didn't have a defensive line coach? I don't know. There's been rumors and speculation about that not having a defensive line coach could have been a big reason as to why Mason Smith declared for the NFL draft. It was a head-scratching decision for me. I thought that if he came back in a Blake Baker defense, that defense should be much improved. I thought his draft stock would rise. But again, everyone has a different situation. Everyone has to do what they think is best for them. I just think that there are better defensive tackles out there at 48 overall. Even if you believe Mason Smith has this potential. I mean, Makai Wingo, for one, who was a lot more productive at LSU than Mason Smith was. We've heard about Jordan Jefferson. I mean, Jordan Jefferson's a guy that we sat here last week and talked about how many people at the Pro Day said that they were here specifically for Jordan Jefferson. He's a guy that continues to rise up draft boards. He was very productive last year. When Makai Wingo went down, he was your best defensive tackle. There was no question about it. He kind of pushed Mason Smith out of the rotation at times. I mean, not only do I think there's better defensive tackles, I think LSU has 2 better defensive tackles here at 48 overall. So he has Mason Smith at 48 overall. That's the second round. Going all the way to round 4, pick 104. The Arizona Cardinals take a second LSU Tiger. It's a defensive tackle, Makai Wingo. Look, we all know about Makai Wingo. He meant so much to this team for the last 2 years. I mean, he came over from Missouri. He was Brian Kelly's first big transfer along with Jaden Daniels. He came into this season as a first-team All-American. Didn't quite live up to that, but was that his fault or was that on that Matt House defense? He battled through some injuries this year. He's a bit undersized at that position for the next level, but honestly, I mean, Aaron Donald, they're similar sizes, and Aaron Donald played a little bit inside, a little bit outside. He predominantly played that defensive tackle spot. Makai Wingo could do that. He's a very strong player. He has a low center of gravity. Again, I think that 2023 defense hurt his draft stock significantly. I think he's another player who also should have considered coming back. That didn't happen, though. I do think he projects well at the next level. Again, I would take him over a Mason Smith just because he had been productive in college at 2 spots. He was a freshman All-American in Missouri, comes here, puts on another All-American season at LSU, and then this past year, it was a disappointment for every single person on that defense. He battled through injuries, but he's a solid player nonetheless. In round 7, that's where we move to. Matt Miller has the New England Patriots taking Charles Turner. This is a guy that has not been mocked in a lot of drafts. I mean, most people thought he was going to be a free agent, but, Miller mentioned he's an experienced multi-year starter at center. It was one of the best offensive lines in the nation last year, and, Turner was kind of the anchor of that offensive line. He was the leader of that group, the veteran presence, if you will. I mean, as good as Will Campbell and Emory Jones were, they stepped in as true freshman tackles 2 seasons ago. Charles Turner was kind of there to guide them, to kind of be that veteran leader on that offensive line. The Patriots need offensive line help in a big way. The Patriots need everything, first off, but they need offensive line help in a big way. Charles Turner, that's not a bad selection. Okay, so what I like and dislike about this mock draft. I love Brian Thomas at 12 overall. I've kind of seen him mocked into the late teens, early 20s. But after what he did at the NFL Combine, I do think he could go a little higher than that. I think Arizona's a really good spot for him. I think he could help out Kyler Murray a lot. Kyler Murray likes to throw those balls up deep down the field. Brian Thomas has proven that he can go get 50-50 balls, that he is a really good deep threat down the field. I think that fits to what Kyler Murray likes to do really well. I don't see Mason Smith going that high. not that I don't think he could be a good player, just based on what he did at LSU's Pro Day, based on his injury history and his production at the college level, I don't see someone taking a chance on him at 48 overall. I mean, third, fourth round, maybe so. In the second round, you can get a guy out there who I think is more of a sure thing, or that at least you're sure about. Because again, I mean, Mason Smith, his ceiling is as high as he wants it to go. How healthy is he? What version of Mason Smith are you going to get? Makai Wingo in the fourth round seems a little low, but I could see that happening. He is a little bit undersized for that position. The biggest surprise to me is that Matt Miller did not have Jordan Jefferson being drafted at all. I mean, there's been a lot of mock drafts out there that have Jordan Jefferson being drafted ahead of Makai Wingo, and he doesn't have him on his board at all. I mean, Jordan Jefferson was solid at the LSU Pro Day. He was very productive this year. He's probably your best defensive tackle, kind of the one consistent presence you had on that defensive front for all of 2023. He's a big body. He's 6'4". He's about 300 pounds. He has the size to play in there because everything you're concerned about with Makai Wingo, the injury this past year and the undersize, Jordan Jefferson doesn't have that. He didn't have an injury this past year. He's not undersized. So I don't see how Jordan Jefferson doesn't get drafted. I could actually see him going fifth round. There's a lot of people out there who are very high on Jordan Jefferson. Now, it's a conversation we've had before, but I do want to kind of revisit it now that spring football is officially underway. I mentioned earlier that Brian Kelly talked about he felt good about the retention at the defensive tackle spot. Well, right after he said that, Makai Wingo declared for the NFL draft. You already knew you were losing Jordan Jefferson. Mason Smith declared for the NFL draft, which was a shock to everyone. You are paper thin there now because you didn't address that in recruiting because you thought you were going to hold on to Mason Smith and Makai Wingo. You didn't. Who's there now? Jalen Lee's there. Jacoby and Guillory is going to be a starter on this team. I mean, he's the only guy with any experience playing on your defensive line. Jalen Lee, the Florida transfer, came in. He didn't play a ton last year. He got in there a little bit. You bring in Sean Washington, the JUCO transfer, who was the one-time Georgia signee. Maybe he can give you some depth. Maybe he can take over and grab a starting spot. Who knows? Now, you got Dominic McKinley coming in. I don't expect him to make a huge impact, at least not game one, because he's not participating in the spring. Dominic McKinley's not going to be there until fall practice. Kelly talked about cross-training a few guys. I think there's two guys out there that stand out above the rest. I think that Savion Jones, as good of a defensive end as he was last year, he's not really a pass rush specialist. You can find somebody out there, whether it's Deshaun Womack, somebody like that can get out there and rush the passer. You could move him inside if you needed to. I mean, he's 6'4", he's 280 pounds. He puts on a little bit of weight. He's right there. I mean, Makai Wingo was about that size, maybe a little bit heavier, not quite as tall, and he managed fine. Matter of fact, he did really well. Paris Shand is another. Right now on LSU's official roster, they have Paris Shand at 6'5", 275 pounds. You had 10 to 15 pounds to Paris Shand. We saw what he can do. I mean, he's a bull rusher. He stuck his hand up there 2 or 3 times last year and got some batted balls. If you could have that in the middle of your defense, I think Paris Shand and Savion Jones, along with a Jacoby and Guillory, with a Sean Washington, those guys don't have to move inside full time because I know what you're thinking. Well, if you move them inside, then you're a little thin on defensive end. For sure, this would be a situational thing. This would be something that you could say, hey, in these specific packages, we're going to move Shan down, we're going to move Jones down, we're going to put Deshaun Womack in to rush the passer. In other situations, Shan and Jones will be outside. You'll have Guillory in there. You'll have Sean Washington in there. That's kind of what we're looking at. I think you can do it. You're going to have to piece it together a little bit. But if anybody can do it, it's Blake Baker, right? I mean, that's why you give him this big contract. That's why you bring him in to revamp your defense. We saw what he did in Missouri. He went in there. He had a tough defense in Missouri his first year, but they still struggled a little bit. His second year in that program, he had him in the top 50 defense from like 130 the year before. I mean, he was excellent. I don't see why he can't do that here. Because while you're struggling with depth on the defensive line, top to bottom on this defense, you still have a lot more talent than Missouri did when he took over that job. And he fit in, right? Did really well there. I don't see why you can't have something similar here at LSU this year.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.